Hello and welcome to the May Slice webinar or Swebinar. First, I apologize for our late delay. We had a little bit of a technical glitch, but hope that everybody was able to get on and start viewing the Swebinar. I'd like to remind you that if you have any questions or if you're having any technical issues, to contact us on Twitter at SliceCom or using the hashtag Swebinar. I'd like to start by thanking our partner for this webinar, the Greater Philadelphia Chamber of Commerce, and Verizon, their sponsor for Small Business Week. This webinar is being broadcast as part of Small Business Week. I apologize for our late delay. We had a little bit of a technical... Okay. I think that all of our technical glitches should be fixed for now. Today we're going to talk about marketing tools. Marketing is changing quickly, and the tools and technology we use to market are changing even more quickly. New tools are introduced pretty much every day, and older technologies are being outdated and upgraded and changed and integrated and combined. Other tools are disappearing or not being supported at all. Tools like this one, Google Hangout, also change quite often, lending to our technical glitch. Some are enabling integration, and others are not using APIs at all. In this webinar, our expert panelists, who I'm so excited to introduce you to, will discuss when and how to evaluate your marketing tools and technology to ensure that you are using the best and most efficient things that you can, and to ensure that you are using all of the newest techniques and approaches. So let's get to it and introduce our panelists. Anita Andrews is the VP of Customer Success at RJ Metrics. Anita, please tell us a little bit about yourself and your day-to-day work.
Sure. RJ Metrics is a analytics platform. We work with e-commerce and other SaaS companies. My team is responsible for getting people onto the platform and making them successful, primarily around optimizing their marketing spend, operational side of things, as well as things like customer retention, loyalty, etc., using data.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And where are you joining us from today? Center City?
I am in our fair city, right here near City Hall.
Fantastic. Next, we're going to talk to Joel Caparella. Joel is the principal at Inflection Methods, and he is also the host of the podcast Caps CarCast. Joel, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Sure, thanks, Cass. So I've spent a good majority of my career in marketing, mostly in the software space and in professional services. For about the last year, I've been helping business leaders to capitalize on the shifting landscape of media, something that's nothing new, but what you find a lot today is the discussion we're going to have today about tools is prioritization and connecting that strategy to plan and tactics is a challenge. So that's what I've been doing is really helping business leaders and mostly small businesses figure out how they do that with the bandwidth that they have and without taxing their budget.
Thanks for joining us. And last but not least, we have Brendan Lowry. Brendan is the marketing director at Curelate. Brendan, what have you been up to lately and what's keeping you busy?
Yeah, hey everybody, and thanks for having me, Cass. So just in case people aren't familiar with Curelate, we're a visual marketing platform that helps brands measure, manage, and monetize their images. So we built a marketing platform that has a suite of tools that helps brands measure and drive engagement across Pinterest, Instagram, and Tumblr. And so my role is really focused on helping these brands understand how they can use our tools and really see success on these more visual platforms.
Awesome. I am so happy that you guys decided to join us today. I'm sure this is going to be a really great, robust conversation. Before we get started with the questions, though, I wanted to remind everyone that this is meant to be an interactive session. We've already received questions from quite a few of you, and thank you for that in advance. But please feel free to send them in as well, as the conversation will change based on the questions that we receive. You can send us questions on Twitter by tweeting to @SliceCom, SLICECOMM, or using the hashtag Swebinar. That's S with webinar. Our chat will take about an hour, so please stay tuned, and we'll do our best to get to as many of the questions as we can. Okay, so I want to start by setting some context before we go ahead and drive right into the tools and technology. Anita, I'm going to start with you. What are some considerations that our audience members should have in the back of their minds as they listen to our conversation and thoughts today?
Sure. I think the thing to keep in mind is that the right tool very much depends upon where you are in, not just in your business's growth. So Are you kind of an early company? Are you a later stage company, et cetera? But also your level of savviness and capacity to take advantage of that tool. So as we have this conversation today, talking about the various analytics tools, but also the marketing tools, you really have to think about what makes sense for you today, and hopefully we'll make sure to kind of address some of that in the course of the conversation. But also recognize that it's good to take notes about other sets of tools, and just know that what you're hoping to do is to grow into them over the course of your business.
Thanks. Joel, anything that you have to add to that around setting context for this conversation?
Well, first, I would agree with everything that Anita just mentioned. I think that's evaluating where you are and what your priorities are. But I also think, going back to what I said in the beginning, strategy is a word that we toss around a lot, but you'd be surprised of how few companies actually boil that strategy down to an actual plan and then measure and actually align the tactics against that plan. So the tool is really only as good as what you're trying to solve, the solution that you're out to deliver to the marketplace, whether you're services or whether you're a product company, whether you're retail, B2B or B2C. The strategy has to be connected to a tangible plan that we could identify, that everybody can adopt as their own, and then extrapolate it out to tactics so we could measure it. And if you can't do that, then this discussion about tools is really not worthwhile. So if you're watching, that's the first thing you probably want to do when we're done here today is, take an inventory and be honest with yourself about what's our plan actually, what is our strategy, and does the tactics align with that strategy meaningful, and does the organization across the whole understand what those tactics and plan mean?
Fantastic. And I would also remind everybody that tools and technology are only as good as the people who use them. So if you don't have people who are inclined or have the time or the talent to be able to use them, then maybe put that into your consideration as you're thinking about what you're using as well. Okay, I'm going to get right into some audience questions because we have a lot of them, and I want to make sure we get to as many as we can. The first question from our audience says, with all of the tools available, how do I prioritize them? What goes first? Anita, I'm going to start with you again on this one.
Sure. So, look, there's no magic formula that works across all of the companies in our audience. But I think that a good way to approach this is to say it's important to have some basic level of metrics about your business, right? So if you can't sort of be able to tell, and largely I'm speaking about companies that are enabled by the web, but if you don't have a basic understanding of sort of what's going on your website, things like Google Analytics are great for that, as well as sort of some of your more transactional metrics, i.e., where are you getting leads from if you're a lead-oriented business, or if it's a sales-oriented business, where are you getting sales from? Kind of things like orders, shipping, and return rates and things like that, or size of contracts, and just being able to tie those basic pieces together. I think it's worth investing there. From there, I think the thing to prioritize on is where are you spending your money. So if you're spending money on Google AdWords, then make sure you have a complete understanding of that spend. If you're spending money on some sort of third-party lead generation service, then invest the effort into making sure you have the data connected from that lead generation service back into your business.
Awesome. Brendan, what do you think goes first? What should people be prioritizing?
Yeah, I think for what Anita just said, that all makes complete sense, and is probably what I would have started off with. So thanks for covering that. The one thing that brands may not have considered is actually looking at what your competitors are using. So while you may not kind of copy exactly what they're doing, and you may not be able to afford the tools, or you may be going in different direction, you can, with 2 quick ways, you can actually do this, and they could be quick wins. So the first is really to simply look at their social channels. So identify if they're using a certain tool for publishing, if they're using a certain tool to track the clicks and the traffic that's happening from social. You can often find in tweets or at the bottom of status updates in Facebook that this is happening via Hootsuite or via Sprout Social. So you also may be able to see a vendor's name in one of the URLs that's being shared. And then the second way is to actually see what software is being used on a brand's website. And there's a free Chrome plugin tool called, I think it's Ghostly, or yeah, it is Ghostly. And this plugin basically crawls the code of a brand's website and can identify the different tools that are being used from that brand. And with Curelate, I came in, kind of the only marketing person. This was really my first job, and I had no idea what I was doing, right? So the first thing that I did was go to kind of our competitors' websites, go to other SaaS companies in the space, and figure out what tools they're using. It gave me a very kind of this bucket of direction, and of course I got to pick and choose. But before that, there was really no direction. So just by seeing what they're already using on social and seeing what's on their website, you'll probably find a few different sources.
And it's not like this is being broadcast live, Brendan, just between us. So don't feel like, you have to pump yourself up too much or anything.
Believe me, I won't.
Joel, what do you think are the priorities? What should people be looking at or doing first?
Well, first of all, I'd not heard of Ghostly, so thank you, Brendan. I'm gonna add that to the arsenal because I think it's a great one. I'm always in the source code myself, so that'll save me some time. So I appreciate that one. Look, I think let's set aside the tool and the prioritization. I think we have to err on the side of simplicity. That's always, and it's interesting. I came out of the ERP world. I spent a number of years with SAP, and large enterprises, they're going to be on those systems for the foreseeable future, right? They're not really shifting to the cloud. As a matter of fact, if you look at the marketing tools and the social tools, that they've been growing with such a rapid pace because it's a gap that the big ERP providers really couldn't fill, right? So when if we're a smaller business, I think we have to worry about two things: is can we utter with specificity exactly what it is we're trying to achieve? It goes back to the plan, and then once that's identified, if we can't do that, that's a bigger problem. But if we can do that, then we have to appreciate two things. One, what's the simplest solution? And truthfully, and some people might think this is nails on a chalkboard, but it could be using Excel for 6 months or whatever if you're a small business. Like, don't spend money if you don't have to. It goes back to Anita's point about if you are spending money, make sure you know how that money's performing. That's what's great about Google Suite is they give you a lot of performance metrics. So the first thing is err on the side of simplicity. I think the second thing absolutely has to be concerned with your data today, because I could tell you as a person who's been in the software world for quite a while that data, when data becomes a mess, it's very costly and expensive to clean up. And especially with all the cloud providers today, we might have 3 or 4 different cloud service offerings, and it makes it very challenging to pull our data together. I mean, there's obviously a lot of vendors out there that do this sort of thing, and I don't really know a whole lot about RJ metrics, but I think they pull in some data there. But if your data is not clean, then you're not going to be able to analyze it. So err on the side of simplicity and care about your data early. Those are the two things that I would suggest to prioritize.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. We often get customers who come onto our platform here, and the first thing that we have to do is actually cleanse through that data, and it's not a very exciting process, but it's really the only way you can use the tools and make sense of things.
Awesome, thank you. So Anita, I'm going to come back to you though, because you mentioned Google Analytics as one of the first priority tools that people need to have set up. Are there right ways and wrong ways to set up your Google Analytics?
Yeah, and I want to preface that by saying that one of the reasons I say it's a thing to set up is A, because it's free, and B, because it's popular. And using something that's popular isn't necessarily like the thing to do, but what it is that you often find that small and medium-sized businesses, which are strapped for resources to really manage these tools, it's really great to use a tool that a lot of other people in your community are using, because when you have questions around that, you have people to go to and ask questions. So, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that probably 99% of Google Analytics implementations are wrong. And so, yes, there is definitely a right and a wrong way to set it up. It isn't about trying to get the data in there, 100% correct. To create a really functional webinar here, I'd say that I don't think you're striving to have it be perfect, but I do think it's worth going through and making sure that, if you Google top 10 Google Analytics or something like that, you will get those lists. Take the time to follow those things and implement things like events, goals. Make sure that you're tracking links outside of your site or taking you out of your site properly so you understand your exit rates. There's a few things like that you should just do and get right. If you're in e-commerce or selling something online, make sure you implement the e-commerce tracking. And you can always verify some of that data back with what's in your website's database. But the idea is to make sure that if you're going to go ahead and use this, just because it's free doesn't mean it's right. And so it's only going to be as right as you actually put the effort into to make it be so.
Awesome. Joel or Brendan, do you guys have anything to add to that in terms of Google Analytics setup or implementation, things that you've seen people do right or wrong?
Well, I'd actually just have a question for Anita, right? Because a lot of the B2B customers that I help are clients that have no experience with it are frustrated because they feel like it's predisposed towards retail and B2C. I mean, is that would you say that's an accurate frustration for B2B customers? Because they're perplexed as to, if there's no event or activity that they could track from it or they naturally track, they're kind of flummoxed as to how to maximize the value of it.
Yeah, I think the perception that it's not really usable for sort of lead gen only or kind of a B2B play is out there. And the problem is that that's largely supported by the lack of content in blog posts out there around how to leverage Google Analytics for a sort of a small business or sort of a non-online business. You absolutely, look, if you're putting up a website, you're putting it for some purpose. If it's there to generate phone calls to an 800 number or to generate contact requests, there are other great free tools, some of them that Google offers, to allow you to track those leads properly, so at least you can understand the performance across your site. Also, if you're going to put up a website, you've decided that it's worth investing in displaying your brand in a particular way across the 10, 20, whatever pages on there. Your customer is going to come to that website, or your potential customer is going to come to the website and decide to either call you or not call you. And what you need to understand is what is working for you to generate those calls and what is not working for you. And you can get that kind of information by understanding how the customer is navigating your site using Google Analytics. But absolutely, you can track your leads from there to a large extent. Again, not perfect, but definitely to a large extent.
Thanks for going a little bit deeper on that, and thanks for your question, Joel. Brendan, I have an audience question for you. If a company is in a position with a tight budget and they need to choose between a tool that helps them measure versus a tool that helps them engage, which should they choose?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that everyone probably on this panel would agree that if there really isn't that much value in measuring something if there's nothing to measure. So as a small business, you're in a medium-sized business, you really need to first prove that there is value in measurement. And you can do that in really quick ways, right? You can create your own social reports by going on Twitter and searching for your name, searching for your ad mention, going on Instagram and searching for your hashtag, going to Pinterest and typing in your URL and seeing how many pins are being shared from your site every day. And you can kind of use that as a sanity check, right? How long does that process actually take you? And if you do break a sweat, if it is very difficult, if you find yourself spending hours on this, then I think there's an argument to then go and find the measurement piece and put that in place. Because throughout that process, along the way, you're going to understand what was challenging about that process, what data points were most difficult to pull, what data points were you not able to successfully grab. And then as a result, when you're searching for that right measurement tool, you'll be able to bring that to the vendor and say, hey, here are the things that I'm struggling with tracking. Can you solve for this? Can you solve for this problem? It also helps you kind of develop that strategy and understand, again, what your challenges may be. When we first started Curate, HubSpot was a tool that we initially brought on, right? We knew that we were a B2B SaaS company, and we knew we had to have some type of CRM system in place, and HubSpot was sort of the recommended tool. When we initially started, again, in the first few months, we had no idea what we were doing, and it wasn't very valuable. We weren't using the tool at all, and that's because we didn't have a strategy going into it. We didn't know what we wanted to measure. We didn't know what we were going to do with that data. Now we're in a place where we're having success with it because we've learned a few things, but initially spending a few weeks up front, really understanding what you want to measure and what you need to measure, can really help in the long run.
Brendan, I have a specific question about HubSpot, so I'm going to come back to that if that's okay. But I wanted to ask Joel or Anita if you guys have thoughts on, should you go with tools to measure or tools to engage to begin with?
I'd agree with Brendan. I think engagement is again, if you're not engaging, there's nothing to measure, right? So I would completely agree with him there. One of the things I do when I'm looking for clients to help is I'll look at job postings on LinkedIn, especially around content and things like that, social. And two things pop out at you when you look at these things is that social-oriented positions in companies, whether it's B2B or B2C, are distinctly junior in nature, surprisingly, and they read very tactically. In other words, they're not really embedded with, just by the nature of the job description, into what, and back to what Brendan was saying, what the company's trying to achieve. So if engagement is your priority, and I do think that it must be your priority, then you have to make a decision about how am I going to actually affect that? And forget the tool for a second. I mean, if I had to pick a tool, I think I use Buffer. It's free. That's why I use it. It really helps me very tacitly measure, my social feeds and things like that. It's not very advanced. You could pay for an advanced version, but it's simple. So I'll use a free tool like that. But getting back to what's the intent and how serious am I going to be about creating my content, sharing it? What am I trying to drive and achieve? Again, I'm kind of echoing what Brendan just said here, but that's what I would suggest to if you're out there looking at this. Is the first thing to do is take a look at not only what you're trying to measure, but who are the people, who are the talent internally. And a lot of times you're going to find it's not necessarily people in the sales group or in the marketing department. You might have somebody in operations that is naturally connected, and they have data to share. I was just thinking as Brendan was talking, I love doing these things because it really edifies me, and I gain things from it. I learn a thing or two myself. So I can guarantee you have somebody in your organization that's an expert that you're not really connected with the engagement part of what you're doing is from a marketing and sales perspective. So engagement is definitely the priority. I err on, again, simplicity, also free if I can, and I would go from there. So I don't know if Anita would have anything to add, but that's certainly how I kind of suggest to my clients what they do.
The only thing I'd add, 100% agree with what you both said. The only thing I'd add is that I think it kind of ties back to my opening comment, which is you have to develop a barometer about where you are as an organization. So you can, if you're not engaging customers, you need to focus on engaging customers. But then you sort of reach a point where you've been spending a lot of effort around engaging, and it is time to take a little tour around understanding whether you're measuring things properly. Do you really have a good sense of like what the return on that engagement, both the effort to get engagement and also the performance of those that have engaged, it really is. And then sort of you kind of beef up your processes. It might mean new tools, it might mean new analytical tools, it might mean more and different marketing tools, but then you sort of go back again towards engagement, and then you need to step off again and think about, do you have all the data in the right place? Have you outgrown your systems? And that knowing when you should be flipping back and forth, well, part of that is just developing your own barometer and understanding when things have worked and when they haven't. And the other is, talking with people.
Okay, so I'm going to come to this HubSpot question now because I think it's relevant. We got this question from an audience member. They ask specifically, do you have an experience with HubSpot and their free CRM for small business? Brendan, is that what you were talking about earlier, and how did you make it work for you?
Yeah, so we were fortunate enough to be able to kind of purchase the medium tier right away, so we never actually had experience with the free small business tier. But with that being said, from what we've heard and our overall experience with HubSpot, it's been amazing. I think the thing that really stands out with them is the level of customer service. So even at a free tier, they know that you're going to potentially become a paying client, and they're probably going to go out of their way to make sure that you understand why the tool is valuable, to make sure that it's working for you, to offer advice and strategies. So given that it's a free tool, and that the other great thing about HubSpot is that there isn't a lot of ramp-up time or a lot of integration that's needed within your site. You can create a lot of content on HubSpot landing pages that match the look and feel of your site, but don't require a lot of coding. It's definitely not a big risk to give it a try. So my experience with HubSpot overall has been fantastic. And again, if you're signing up as a small business, they're going to see you as a potential paying client, and they're going to give you the value and strategy that you need.
Joel, I know that you've had a little experience with HubSpot free for small business. Will you talk to us about it?
Yeah, actually, I've used HubSpot before I was running my own firm. I used HubSpot since probably 2011, I want to say, maybe earlier. I was an early adopter of HubSpot, and first of all, it's a fantastic tool. I love it. It's in the market, and what they've done is it's basically in the marketing automation category. So think of like a Marketo or an Eloqua or things like that. I think it's a little bit more affordably priced than those other tools, but it's great. It's great for small businesses. I think they target small businesses a lot because it's very user friendly. If for a company's on WordPress and their site's on WordPress, they have a content management system that's incredibly easy to use and graphically oriented, so you could do decent design without being a coder. However, one thing about HubSpot, the main suite, and I'll get to the CRM in a second, the main suite is really, as you said in the beginning, Cass, only as good as the solution you're trying to develop. In other words, it doesn't really work unless you have content, and and HubSpot does a great job of supporting their clients and customer base and educating them on how to do that. So I think if you go to their blog, by the way, and if you're on the cast and you haven't seen their blog, it's a great resource. But the tool isn't effective unless you have content and you're driving somebody through some kind of marketing process with the intent of getting them converted over to sales. Okay, so that's the first thing. What they've been doing is they've been structuring, I think they're in the long run kind of competing with Salesforce in a way with this new free CRM offering. So it's a bare bones CRM. CRM is customer relationship management. It's basically a sales pipeline management tool. So after the leads are nurtured and actually now sales qualified, you would put them and use them in this tool. Now it's standalone, and I use it myself for my business because, again, I'm a big fan of free, right? And it's really very smartly organized. It's structured by deal. the data integrity isn't, it's not as necessary to keep the data as aligned as it would be with a Salesforce and things like that. So it's incredibly easy to use. It's all aligned by the deal. And then if you do eventually turn on the marketing side of HubSpot, you can connect the deals back to the content that produced it. So I'm a big fan of it. There's absolutely no risk. It's easy. You can literally get up and running with it in a half an hour, no lie. It's basically, if I'm targeting Cass at Slice, I just add Slice Communications as the company and Cass in there, and it tracks my phone calls and everything you would expect a Salesforce automation type of tool to do. So I'm a fan of it. I think if you don't have a CRM in-house, you have a small sales team of, say, no more than, I would say, 10 people, and that's actually a bigger sales team if you think about it. So let's say you have 5 people doing biz dev, and you don't have a CRM, you're using spreadsheets or something, I think it's a great way to get started.
So to follow up on that question about CRM, because quite often when we talk to businesses, small and mid-sized businesses, about their CRM, they first and foremost don't know what it is and what the acronym is. So again, I'll just say it's a customer or client relationship management tool, but then they also don't know why they should use one. So Joel, you were talking about tracking somebody and targets through the pipeline. Anita, what are some other reasons that people might want to put a CRM in place as a tool?
I think that the primary reason is, I cannot tell you, I think almost every customer that comes to us, and even in my previous lives, it's always, where are our customers coming from and which ones are performing well, right? And you have to be able to answer that question, otherwise you're just talking to, kind of this broad audience, and you're not sort of narrowing the funnel. So a typical mistake that a lot of services companies get into is, hey, somebody wants to hire us, we should take that engagement. No, that's not a great idea, because you don't know, whether those people, and you're laughing here, you're in the services business as well, Cass, but, it's the question of, are these people that are going to use your team's time in the best way, in ways that just not only deliver results for them, but also help you grow your base of understanding? Are they going to be margin effective? I mean, all these questions are good things to ask, and you need a tool like a CRM tool to both understand where you got those customers from, and to also understand how they perform for you over the long haul.
Awesome. Brendan, how are you guys, other than the ways that were mentioned before, how are you using CRM, or what sort of tools are you using, or what sort of reports are you using from your CRM?
Well, sort of to build upon what Anita was mentioning, is that it's really important to now track these relationships that you're building, right? Maybe 5, 10 years ago, a request for a demo or a request for a proposal, that went from a Google search to the request to contact. Right now, people have so many options. They're exploring. They're looking for value before they ask for that demo or before they ask for that proposal. And so as a result, you need to give them educational and valuable content up front to prove that you are the leader in this space, and that you're a company that's willing to help them initially in order before you close them on a deal. And so in order to track all of that, in order to know that, okay, 3 months ago this person viewed our blog, they downloaded a best practice guide, now they visit our website once a week since then, now is the right time to actually reach out and try and push that deal through. So I think we're in a place where buyers are bombarded with content, and they have so much that's available to them that the process is much longer. And as a result, a tool like HubSpot and other CRM tools help you manage and measure that process, because otherwise it would get archived in your email inbox and buried, because as we know, a week later you have hundreds of new emails. So it's a good way to measure that from, again, very top of the funnel to the point where you want to push them into the sales cycle.
If I could just add in there, here at RJ Metrics, we use a large utilization that we get out of our CRM tools, and kind of the connectedness to the rest of the data is being able to forecast, right? So you're able to figure out, building upon what Brendan said, you're able to figure out how long it takes for a customer from that initial point of contact to actually become a customer, or even just be ready to engage in the sales process and then finally convert. And that's how we're able to understand how we're going to perform a quarter out from now or 2 quarters out from now. And you want, especially as a small and medium-sized business, you have to know what your cash flow situation is predicted to look like in order to make things like hiring decisions or purchasing decisions and things like that as well.
So Anita, I have a quick follow-up question. We've been talking about HubSpot as a CRM. What other CRM tools do you like or have you seen and thought were interesting?
CRM tools are really hard, right? So there's like the CRM tool that's more like the marketing automation, for example, the HubSpot side of the world. And then there's the CRM tools that are much more about like basically customer relationship. I mean, that's what it's the definition of. But so like, the two extremes there are kind of like a HubSpot and a Salesforce. And, in the world of the things like Salesforce, because Salesforce can be very expensive, are things like Zoho CRM, there's Base CRM, there's just a lot of different tools in that space. What you need to think about, and they all vary in their functionality and their pricing pretty strongly. It really depends on how many users you're going to have, how much data that you're going to have per sort of, how much level of customization you need per kind of inside of there. Those are the kinds of things you want to be asking yourself when you get into the purchasing situation. With CRM tools, it feels like once you buy them, you're kind of signed up for life, but it's actually not the case. I'd suggest that you err on the side of being conservative, building upon what Joel said. Err on the side of being conservative unless you're just, you're in some sort of very sort of different situation. Err on the side of being conservative and know that most of the time you can export that data out, and it is a little bit of work to get it into the next tool, but it's usually much better than paying the pretty large fees that a lot of CRM tools charge.
Okay, so I want to just take a quick break and remind everybody two things. One, if you missed the beginning of this webinar, it will be available for viewing afterwards. We're going to send out an email to everybody who registered to make sure that you have the link. The second thing is that we are taking your questions. You can tweet them to us using @SliceCom or #Swebinar, and we'll try to get to as many of them as we can. I have another question, an audience question. This person asks, using social media, what are some effective ways that a small operation, a sole founder or a founder and small team, can attract an audience that is likely to use their product? Joel, I'm going to start with you. What do you think?
I think this is distinctly business to business, okay? Because I don't really do a whole lot of business to consumer, so keep that in mind as I kind of answer this. But I really like LinkedIn's content platform for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's not being overused right now. I have probably 1,000+ contacts on LinkedIn, and I could tell you that of that feed, maybe 2 or 3 of my contacts a day, at most, are actually publishing on LinkedIn. And if you're not familiar with it, about a year or so ago, LinkedIn opened up their content, their influencer program to basically everyone. So for a number of times, they had guys like Richard Branson and folks like that writing exclusively for them, and they did that for about 18 months to get kind of people used to reading content. They bought a company called Pulse, again, about 18 months ago, which was a news feed type of thing from different sources, and then they built a content production platform. It's similar to Medium, if you're familiar with Medium. But what I like about it in the B2B space is that your content gets views. I could tell you, I post my stuff, my car cast that I do, I post it on a number of places. It gets the most views off of LinkedIn because not many people are posting and publishing there today. My audience is naturally predisposed to where my expertise is because of my work history and who I'm connected with, and it's easily shared. And people discuss it, and also it's a great networking tool as well. So if you're a sole proprietor, if you're don't have a large company, and matter of fact, even I would suggest for any size company, but if you're a small company, 1 or 2 employees, maybe 5, I would absolutely start to use LinkedIn's publish. I don't even know what it's called. I think it's called Pulse, I think. But you basically go there on your profile and say, publish, and you could write a blog post. Again, the layout's very similar to Medium. If you're not familiar with Medium, it's another publishing platform. So I really like it. Again, I go back to the tool Buffer that I use. It's free. Buffer app, I think, is .com, and it's just a monitoring, publishing and monitoring type of social feed. So I could push my content out over LinkedIn, I could, and Facebook and Twitter, and see how that's performing, how many clicks, how many retweets and shares, and things like that. So I'm very bullish on it. I like it. I use it myself. I always recommend to my clients to use it, really, no matter how big or small they are, because it's such greenfield. No one's really using it today. So that's what I'm not kind of going on about it, but I'm excited about it to get the word out because I think it's untapped potential right now and it's underused. So if you take one thing away today, start using it because I think you'll see some immediate return.
They owe you some money, Joel. Like, that is a straight-up commercial. You should get royalties on that or something.
Well, you did ask the question, right?
I was also going to say that if everybody jumps on it today, I don't know how untapped it will be.
True. Good point. Brendan, from a B2C perspective, what are some tools that you think small businesses can use to attract customers?
Yeah, so what's interesting is while we typically work with larger, like Fortune 500 brands, we have a lot of interest from smaller brands. And one thing that we've always done from the very beginning is we've understood that people that work at smaller brands may eventually work at a larger brand, or that small brand may grow to a larger company that can afford our software. So we tend to be very strategic in our response to people that may not be able to use our tool. And one thing that's always really interesting is that we tell them about the value in Instagram search, right? Of being able to look for a hashtag, and it is almost too straightforward, right? People don't realize that people are using hashtags on Instagram, and those hashtags are very specific, right? And they're showing very specific intent. Typically when people use a hashtag, it's not necessarily to categorize something, right? It's actually to show a feeling or to show an emotion. So when if someone is taking a selfie and they're at Urban Outfitters, they're not necessarily just going to say, hashtag dress, right? They're going to say hashtag love this dress, or hashtag love UO, or hashtag love Urban Outfitters, right? So there's a lot of intent in that you can tap into, and even if your brand isn't being mentioned yet, the fact that someone is mentioning those types of keywords, right, around loving a dress, or and again, this is strictly B2C, or even for hospitality, maybe hashtagging visit Philly and planning a trip. That intent is out there, and you simply just need to look for it on Instagram. So they're very quick, cheap ways to find engagement, because on things like Instagram and Pinterest, everything is very public. Right? On Facebook, it's very private. You don't just have access to what someone is posting. On Instagram and Pinterest, it's the complete opposite. So the engagement is out there for you to search. And when you start to find what type of engagement is working and what those terms are, you can really capitalize.
Well, and Instagram made some announcements recently about even improving the quality of that search functionality as well.
Right. They're going to start. They're going to be using some computer vision techniques, which will be pretty awesome. So they'll be able to surface much more quality content and really start to kind of bury some of the spam. So yeah, that search is going to get even more valuable. And again, right now, small businesses aren't really taking advantage of it. So just like Joel said, there's going to be this window of opportunity for brands to really jump in there before other brands do.
Awesome. So I had another question from the audience. It says, what is the best way to increase social media engagement beyond your current employees? Anybody want to weigh in on that one?
I'd be happy to take this one. So I think that the building upon what Brendan was talking about, the point is not to use social media to just generate transactions, right? You're trying to use social media to engage with your potential customers and your existing customers, to really give these people a sense of who you are and who your company and who your product are beyond just the product. And so I'll give you an example of something that we've been doing at RJ Metrics. We have a pretty robust content marketing team that does an awful lot of publishing around data and analytics, and kind of even weird stories around data and analytics. And something that we're really passionate about here is about team culture. And it's how we make very long days kind of work for our team here, is that we have a pretty strong culture, and we're really protective about it. And so I personally had an idea last fall that I wanted to do a series around culture. It's a post that I'm putting out every month around a particular aspect of the flexibility of our culture. But what we've noticed with those posts that have very little data in them, although I keep striving to find ways to include data in that because we're a data company, but I think the story is more important, we have found that those posts are some of our most shared posts. And I meet people all the time who say, oh, I read your post on such and such, which again has nothing to do with data and analytics, but more so they get interested about the company. They're interested that the people at this company must be passionate about data if we're doing the kinds of things that we're doing and creating the kind of culture that we are. And it was a complete surprise to me that this would be some of our most shared content, but it is. And so what I'd suggest to any business, small, medium, whatever, is to think about what makes you you beyond the product, and to tell that story through your social media. And don't forget that social media isn't just putting out tweets or pictures or anything like that. You can have longer form content that you are then just marketing through those social media channels.
Awesome, thank you. I had another question, and Joel, I'm not going to let you answer this one because we already, I think, know your answer, which is, what is the best social media management tool for those of us who use Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram? Brendan, do you want to weigh in on that one?
Yeah, this one can be tough because I think that we're in a space in the industry right now where the whole marketing and analytics side for social is just sort of blowing up. So there are a ton of options. And we'll start to see over the next few years that a lot of these companies just will stop working, or they'll be acquired, or they'll merge. So I don't think there's one like optimal platform right now for all of those channels. I think that if you're a small to medium-sized business, there again, while Curate is really powerful for Instagram and Pinterest, probably not may not be at a price point for some of the smaller to medium-sized folks. And we often tell people to use Iconosquare, which is an Instagram analytics tool. Again, all the basics that you need are in place. And in terms of Facebook and Pinterest, we actually use Sprout Social at Curate. So we have, I think we're now at 50,000 Twitter followers. I think we're not as strong on Facebook. I think 3,000 likes and I think like 10,000 Instagram fans. So we're at about a medium-sized audience for those channels, and Sprout Social has been perfect for us. It has automated reporting. It allows us to engage with people on a regular basis, and it isn't too expensive. So for us, Facebook and Twitter is covered by Sprout, and for Instagram, for most people on this call, Iconosquare is a good option.
Anita, how about you? What do you think? Any tools that you like for social media management?
Not really. I mean, personally, I use Hootsuite. I think we use Hootsuite here at RJ Metrics. I like it. It does the job just fine. But I really haven't done the work to kind of understand what's out there in the landscape. Surely not as much as Brendan has. On the other hand, what I will say is that it's important to just find a way to manage these things and get the content going, and then you'll start to understand what are the things that you wish you could, again, upgrade to another tool.
Okay, Joel, tell us.
Well, actually, I mentioned Buffer several times already, right? But as a HubSpot user, and this is kind of an under-publicized part of their platform. So in the context of what they do, as far as marketing automation and content marketing and things like that, their social monitoring is pretty powerful. It's not as feature-rich as some of the other tools, but what is great about it is that you could segment your marketing database pretty discreetly, and then set up what I think they call them streams in the monitoring system. So let's say, I'll give you a use case. Let's say we used to target the Agile developer community in one of my stops along my way, and we could basically monitor our database and connect it to the hashtag of a conference that was coming up, and we could see when, hey, 5 people out of our database are tweeting about this conference and they're going to be there, and then we can get our sales guys then set up to engage them and say, hey, we're going to be there 2, do you want to meet, what sessions are you going to, things like that. So it's not the most robust tool in the world, but it's got a nice little mobile app that lets you use and connect and engage as well, monitor, but most importantly, it connects it back to your marketing database. So it's if you're using HubSpot today or even considering it, take a look at that feature because it's powerful in the context of what you use HubSpot for.
Awesome, thanks. We also here at Slice we use Hootsuite. We have used Sprout Social in the past. We've used Sendable. We've used Spreadfast. We currently use Groovy. There are a lot of different tools, and I think it's just a matter of like figuring out which one works for you in terms of what you need from it, what channels that you need to manage with it, and what user experience you like the best, as well as your price point. I don't want to leave this conversation without talking about email marketing as a critical tool in your marketing toolbox. Anita, can you talk a little bit about how small and mid-sized businesses should evaluate email marketing tools and what features and functionalities they should look for?
Sure, yeah. So my sort of basic criteria when I look at email marketing tools, especially for small and medium-sized businesses, really just comes down to kind of 2 aspects. How good are they and what functionality, especially automated functionality, do they offer for things like list management, right? So when people unsubscribe or reply to you by not unsubscribing but say that I want to unsubscribe from this email, how do they handle that? Every time you want to create a new campaign, are you creating new lists, etc.? That kind of stuff is super important, not only because it makes your life easier, but because there's often many things that you don't even know about how emails get delivered, what the chances are that they'll get delivered in an email inbox versus a spam folder versus other sorts of marketing content type of folders based upon how you're managing your list. And that kind of ties into my second area of criteria, which is around how reputable, or what is the reputation of that email marketing provider around actual deliverability, right? So, I mean, my favorite go-to for a small to medium-sized business is MailChimp. There's no question. I know that so many of them tend to purchase Constant Contact. It's really not good for these types of things that I'm talking about. And beyond that, MailChimp has great UI to make it kind of generally pretty idiot-proof, especially if you don't have a lot of time to invest in these things. But that ability to kind of manage your lists well and know that the emails are actually ending up in the email inbox, as long as you practice good email marketing practices, which there's a ton of content there as well, those are the things that I look for.
Okay, Brendan, what do you guys do from an email perspective?
Yeah, so one of the nice things about HubSpot for us is that it's kind of our entire marketing, kind of inbound marketing in one place, so that includes email. And in terms of our strategy, again, for us, it's really about adding value. So on a biweekly basis, we're curating, basically creating an entire email of content that's industry best practices, tips, guides, that type of thing, all free content. And not all of that content drives a Curelate, right? So we're driving people outside of Curelate, but again, our bet is that by adding that value really early on, people will start to come back for more content and eventually find our content further down the funnel. And if one thing I would say, if you aren't subscribed to RJ Metrics blog or RJ Metrics email list, you should absolutely do that. When Curelate was starting out, RJ Metrics was like one of the first companies that we looked at to try and model some of our email efforts after. So they do a great job of, again, and Anita sort of mentioned that they're adding value and interesting content that may not always be directly about RJ and their tool, but it's solving a problem that a marketer or that an e-commerce person may be facing. So for us, email is all about adding value and then, again, understanding where they're clicking. So in the next week's email campaign, we're able to, we have these automatic lights. We're able to send even more personal content the following week.
Joel, other than HubSpot, what do you like from an email marketing perspective?
Yeah, I think actually I agree with both Anita and Brendan. I think MailChimp and HubSpot are probably, if I had to pick one that was just email, I probably would pick MailChimp as well. And I think I'm a big fan of HubSpot, and their email system is very good. And again, especially because it's integrated, right? This kind of goes back to what I was saying in the beginning. Err on the side of simplicity, right? If you're a small business today and you don't have anything in place, I probably wouldn't recommend you go dive into HubSpot right now. Go get MailChimp and cut your teeth on email marketing to drive people to your site. It even goes back to Anita's understanding of using Google Analytics to see if things are working. It's very easy to do, and you're not spending a whole lot of money. I also think this is one thing, it's surprisingly enough, a lot of my clients don't appreciate canned spam laws as well, and that's something they need to appreciate, right? Because it could really damage your company if you just one time and you get your domain blacklisted and the whole nine. So I would also suggest, if you're even thinking about getting into email marketing, is do yourself a favor and spend a couple hours understanding what you can and can't do with canned spam compliance.
If I could just add on to that to say, if people are going to Google that or don't understand the acronym, it's CAN-SPAM. And really, you got to mind your P's and Q's when it comes to email marketing.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you for that caveat. And maybe next time we'll do a session on that and understanding it a little bit.
The most exciting topic in the world, Kat.
We always strive for pure entertainment.
Yeah.
I have one more quick audience question that I want to make sure that we get to. What's the best new tool you found to drive content views? Joel or Anita, do you guys want to start on that one?
Well, I already gave you my 2 cents on LinkedIn, right?
You did, so LinkedIn for sure.
No, I don't know. I go back to that. I mean, I've been using it probably the past 6 months. I like it. I can't think of anything new that I've come across, to say the truth.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have an answer. This isn't my sort of large area of responsibility, but like the answer that comes to my mind is like put out good content. And good content is the thing that will get you good content views, not a tool itself.
I would say, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Anita. I'm sorry. But Facebook's video too. Obviously, it's been big news in the last 6 months about how great they're doing with video. And if you're doing video today, you need to make 2 versions of that video, right? You got to put it on YouTube, and then you have to make a Facebook-friendly version of that as well, because that video is scrolling, and it's on your mobile and you're on Wi-Fi, that video just starts to roll, and there's no audio, and you got to click the button, so it's engaging, same kind of thing. I think the Facebook video is another underutilized resource, and that won't be for long, but I think they're on pace to get more views than YouTube in a year or two, which is really stunning if you think about that. But if you're not using Facebook video, I would probably look at that as well.
Oh, great advice.
And one thing that seems to be a common theme around sort of driving engagement reviews is really about celebration, right? So in Anita's case, they're kind of celebrating their culture and celebrating employees. One thing that, from a B2C perspective, one thing that Curelate is really keen on is helping brands find all these photos that their fans are sharing, with their products in mind or with their products in photo, and then helping them collect those photos and then bring them back on the brand's website and celebrate those consumers, right? Because what happens is when a millennial sees that they're featured on UrbanOutfitters.com, they sort of freak out, right? They're like, they see Urban as a celebrity, so they immediately go tell all of their friends, and then all of their friends go and look at this photo, right? So a very easy way to start driving more views is to celebrate your fans, bring them into the story, because they're going to then feel more a part of your brand and go tell their friends. And that can be in the B2B space as well. But if you're working with a client, celebrate the success, celebrate what their story is, and share it to social. They're going to share that with their connections.
Yeah, so
that's a great point. I think it's also relevant to a question that we got earlier, which is how do you get people engaged beyond your employees, right? If you're using the content that's developed by your audience, and if you're celebrating it and you're showcasing it and featuring it, you're going to drive content views, and you're also going to get to new audiences, the audiences that you're celebrating. So thank you for that. Okay, I've got one wrap-up question, which is kind of a quick-fire question. In terms of marketing tools and technologies, like we said at the outset, they change all the time. They're changing constantly. So for small and medium-sized businesses, how often should they be reviewing the tools that are currently in their marketing toolbox and looking at other tools, either replacing the ones that they have, adding new ones, consolidating, etc.? We know that this effort takes time and it takes a lot of work in order to be able to evaluate the right tools for you. So how often should companies be doing it? Anita, I'll start with you.
My gut tells me that's probably something you want to do, probably between every year to every 2 years, somewhere in that time frame. Usually because it takes you time to get started on a new tool, and assuming a particular rate of growth, it's probably the case that you may outgrow the tool, and or that software gets innovated and actually gets sort of utilized by a wider market, kind of in that time span. So my sense is probably at that 18-month mark.
Brendan, what do you think?
Yeah, I'd completely agree. I think that you're going to start to identify things that the tool maybe isn't achieving for you, or frustrations you're having, and that'll start to happen a few months into it. But again, it actually may be your fault, which again we found with HubSpot. We just weren't setting things up correctly. We weren't strategizing. So definitely give it some time. And once you're into the thick of things and things are running smoothly, you're going to have vendors that are contacting you. Don't invest too much time into it initially, but yeah, definitely give it that year to really put things into place.
So you're saying don't just review the tool, review yourselves.
Yes.
On a regular basis. Okay,
Just as important.
Joel, what do you think?
No, I like that. I would kind of echo that and kind of take it back to my first answer about making sure that your strategy has a tangible plan and executable actions, right? With that in mind, I agree with an 18-month view as far as tool, because there's no sense you don't swap tools out every quarter. That said, I think you need to evaluate your performance against your plan on at least a quarterly basis to do some course correcting. And then at the end of the year, everybody has a budget cycle at the end of the year, right? So at the end of the year, the performance that you did quarterly has to be evaluated. Okay, do we measure that performance accurately? And then what are the things that worked and didn't work? And then back to Brendan's point, how much of it is us and how much of it is the tool? Mm-hmm. I think you're going to find, in my opinion, 95% of the time it's you. Yep. Right? So I don't think you need to worry about it. You need to wring your hands about the tools when you're making the decision. Make the decision, and then you need to kind of, you kind of have to be in that marriage for a little while, right? So if you're measuring and course correcting on a quarterly basis at least, and then taking inventory of all of that towards the end of the year, that's what I always suggest.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you to all of our incredible panelists. That's all the time that we have for today, so we're going to have to wrap up now. I'd like to remind everybody that this webinar in its entirety will be available on our website as well as on YouTube. So you can come back and watch it, share it, send our panelists follow-up questions. They're all on Twitter, and their Twitter handles are on our website as well. I'd also like to thank the Greater Philadelphia Chamber of Commerce for its support of this webinar. Small Business Week is not over just yet. Tomorrow at 8 a.m. there's another event called Successful Marketing Strategies for Any Business. They also have really fantastic panelists. You can check out the Chamber's website for more information. Our team at Slice is planning our future virtual roundtables, and we'd love to know what marketing, PR, social media, or communications topics you'd like us to address in the future. So feel free to reach out to us anytime on our website or on Twitter. I wanted to thank everybody again, and I hope that you all have a really fantastic Thursday afternoon. Thanks.